We're live now.
Thank you so much. Welcome everyone to Women for Climate Justice, Leading Protection of Water, a formal event at the United Nations Water Conference happening right now in New York City. My name is Osprey Oriole Lake, and I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, or WECAN, and I'm here on Coast Miwok lands in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And as we get started, please be welcome to introduce yourself in the chat for those of you who are in the Zoom room with us, with your name and where you're from. And thank you as we take a moment to do a little housekeeping to ensure people are able to participate in different languages. So I'll start and then we'll get into Spanish interpretation for you to hear. When someone is speaking in a language other than your own, please activate the Zoom interpretation by clicking on the interpretation globe, which is on the lower side of your screen, and choose the language in which you would like to listen. If you're connecting to Zoom through your phone, please touch the three dots at the bottom right corner of the screen where it says More, and choose Language Interpretation, and choose the language in which you would like to listen, and then touch Done. So if one of the interpreters would please kind of give instructions now in Spanish. Thank you. We don't hear you.
Hi everyone. Buenas tardes, me llamo Emily y mi cointérprete es Megan. Estamos aquí para dar la interpretación al español y de español a inglés. Si usted quiere escuchar este evento en español, simplemente puede seleccionar el canal para español haciendo clic en el botón de interpretación abajo en su pantalla. Se ve como un globo terráqueo. Pero si está conectado por la aplicación de Zoom en su teléfono, tiene que hacer clic en los tres puntitos, luego interpretación de idiomas y luego español y luego picarle en Done o finalizar. Y desafortunadamente no se puede acceder a la interpretación a través de los aparatos Chromebook ni de Linux. Pero si usted es bilingüe, no tiene que escoger un canal de idioma, puede quedar nomás en la sala principal. And just a reminder for everybody, both English and Spanish speakers, to please speak slowly and clearly and to mute your mic when you're not speaking, so we have a clear audio feed during this meeting. Y un recordatorio para todas las personas que por favor hablen lentamente, en voz alta, y por favor silencia su micrófono cuando no estén hablando para que tengamos un canal libre de interrupciones para interpretar todo. Muchísimas gracias. Y gracias por su ayuda de crear este espacio multilingüe. Si necesitan cualquier apoyo, por favor, mándanos un mensajito en el chat. Thanks for helping us to create this multilingual space. And if you need any help, just send us a message in the chat.
Thank you so much. And we're really delighted that we can be with you all today in a bilingual space. And thank you again to the interpreters. And I'm seeing people continuing to introduce themselves in the chat. We have people from Morocco, from Canada, across Turtle Island, the US, Iraq, from all different places. So it's really exciting to welcome you to this really important panel. And in this gathering, grassroots women leaders, water protectors, and international policy experts will address the impacts of climate change and destructive projects on global water and share ongoing solutions and strategies for the protection of oceans, freshwater, rivers, and aquatic ecosystems based in a climate justice framework. We are in a water crisis, and we really want to bring attention to what is going on in these different areas of aquatic ecosystems, and also talk about solutions and what we all need to be doing and what we also need to be advocating to do with our governments. We're so honored to have an outstanding panel today, and we really want to thank each of you leaders for joining us and for all the incredible work that you've been doing for years and years and years for our waters. I'm going to introduce the panelists in the order that they are speaking and then provide some opening comments for the presentations. So we will be hearing from great-grandmother Mary Lyons. She is Ojibwe elder, International United Nations observer on women and Indigenous issues. She is from Turtle Island, the USA. Then we will be hearing from Kathy Jetñil-Kijiner. She's a poet, director for Marshallese youth nonprofit Jo-Jikum, and she is the climate envoy from the Marshall Islands. We will be hearing from Alexandra Narvaez. She is Cofán, an Indigenous rights and land defender. She also is a winner of the Goldman Prize. She is from the Ecuadorian Amazon. We will be hearing from Maud Barlow, who is the founding member of the Council of Canadians and co-founder of the Blue Planet Project in Canada. Then we will be hearing from Aurora Conley. She is Bad River Ojibwe with the Anishinaabe Environmental Protection Alliance, also from Turtle Island or the USA. And then finally, we will be hearing from Vassar Seidel. She is the president at the Oxygen Project in the USA. Welcome all of you to this beautiful panel that we have today. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that this is a very challenging time for many people, and I want to welcome you all to a space for us to be together from all over the world. Please know that WeCan is here for you and that you are not alone, and we send you our love and well-being. As part of the UN Water Conference, WeCan is announcing our commitment in our call to action for governments, which we released yesterday, which was World Water Day and the first day of the conference. And I'm going to ask Catherine if she would put a link to this call to action in the chat. We are connecting the water crisis and climate crisis with the vital role of women in all their diversity that are leading climate solutions and really showing how that leadership is absolutely critical right now. Miniwichoni, water is life. These words were spoken to us and we learned about them as they echoed around the world from water protectors at Standing Rock in the fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Miniwichoni, water is life. Earth's oceans, rivers, glaciers, and the hydrological cycle are gravely threatened by climate change. And we know that greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, and human exploitation are destabilizing the water systems fundamental to all life on Earth. So in our call to action, we are highlighting that we need to recognize the human right to sufficient, safe, and clean water, and that we need to outlaw water privatization. Water should be a free public good everywhere that must be a global water commons. Regarding the ocean, we know that the ocean plays a fundamental role in mitigating climate change by acting as a major heat and carbon sink, but the ocean also bears the brunt of climate change, as evidenced by changes in temperature, currents, and sea level rise. We live on a water planet, and there's really no conversation about the climate crisis that can be had without addressing water, whether in some regions there's far too much of it, or in other regions just far too little of it. So we are also uplifting the rights of water in our call to action. WeCan is on the executive committee for the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature, and we are advocating for water to have its own rights, to be healthy and thrive and maintain its own natural cycles. Water is sacred. Globally, over 2 billion people drink contaminated water every day, while over 800,000 people die yearly from drinking contaminated water and not being able to properly wash their hands. Women in all their diversity continue to be impacted disproportionately due to unequal gender norms. Women are the predominant caretakers within households and communities, so relationships and responsibilities around water are integral to maintaining their health and well-being and for those whom they provide. Many women globally must walk for miles each day to collect water for their immediate needs. And a woman's daily tasks only begin after journeys, sometimes very long, to fetch water, a trek that can take hours or more in some regions of Africa and India. So we must secure access to clean and safe water for everyone in every country. And this will require not only changing our detrimental use of water and really abuse of water, but also ensuring that no institutions or corporations impede on this life-giving right to water through water privatization. The understanding that water is sacred and the very essence of life is something we need to uplift every single day. We need to respect water so that we can understand it needs to be a shared commons. We also show in our report a call to action around the role of women as defenders and protectors of water, and that they are central stewards of water and often the backbone of movements to protect water from extractive industries. And in light of this, we are dedicating this session today to Beta Caceres from Honduras, who was murdered in 2016 for standing up to protect a sacred river from a large dam that was to be built in her homelands. And also to honor all the many other women water protectors who have really put their bodies on the line to defend all of the Earth's waters. And we honor and celebrate each and every one of you today. And with that, I'm super honored to hand the floor over to our amazing presenters at the forefront of water defense. And with that, I would like to give the floor to great grandmother Mary Lyons. Each speaker will have about 8 minutes to speak. And you have the floor, great grandmother Mary Lyons. Thank you for joining us.
Bonjour. My name is Second Water Woman. I am Anishinaabe First Nations Ojibwe. I am residing on the ceded territories of the Dakota people here in Minnesota. And it's an honor to share this space with you all. One of the things that I like to bring forward on building that platform of unity is to remind everybody why we're here. What are the fundamentals and the rites of passage to be here within this oneness? So we must begin and identify that this planet belongs to everyone and everything within it. We must be reminded that we were brought here as caretakers and not landlords. We must remind ourselves that everything within this planet is organic, has a spirit, and carries memory. And with that memory, right now we're in one of the prophecies that was brought to us and was carried out throughout time. And they said, you know, it will unfold. And part of that, I would like to share that with you. Our grandfather would tell our community that plenty is the richness for all. Without sharing, we will lose laughter and happiness. Our father would say, when we as original people surrender to a number, we will begin to lose our original commitment to this life. Our grandmothers would say, when you find yourself witnessing our people speaking with a split tongue, they will begin to vanish from our minds. Our mother would say, sometimes you must have to fight in another world that we are not to be a part of. To walk a mile in our shoes means that we will not put a price on water, fire, air, and earth. Our ancestors spoke of their gardens, that they will weaken and we will become hungry. Our ancestors' thirst will begin to become dry and our wells will begin to dry up. Our ancestors' breath will struggle to breathe as the winds will carry the diseases. Our ancestors said our fires will rage throughout Mother Earth, her homelands, and all will feel the blisters of ignorance. The stories of times past, the memories of an organic pathway will only fade if we choose to forget and abandon the rights of nature and humanity. We must always hold this memory as it was told to all tribes of the world, every being. The whispers of our ancestors will echo in the winds, and the memory of their teachings will come from protecting the rights of nature and continuing our responsibility to care for our gardens. We must all rise up and speak with an ancestral voice. No, my life is not for sale, and we will continue to be the best caretakers of the land we call Mother Earth. You see, being an elder, a wisdom keeper, as each one of you are, there's a short, very brief story that we awaken the world with. And when we awaken the world with, it's with memory. And that memory is, in my belief system, is that we had this original agreement with Creator before we entered this space. And when we entered this space, we were birthed in our mother's wombs in the pools, these oceans within inside her. And while our spirit was there, It was downloaded of every history, every walk, every talk since the beginning of time here within this earth. Then when it was time to come into this world, we took that breath, air. Then we felt the warmth, fire. And then we platformed, we nourished on earth. You see, those four elements are for everyone, everything. We have to coexist together in order to survive. And the thing is, what is being forgotten is this memory, this introduction. It is so easy if you buy something and you have to get an instruction book and the book is not there, so you're going to try to figure it out. Well, you can't do this within where we are in our dependency on life. You see that water carries memory. That memory will funnel around the world. That air carries memory. It travels around the world. That fire carries memory and it's felt around the world. And earth is the existence that holds that pack of those four elements. You see, building a bridge, we can build a bridge as the oneness of humanity. And not only humanity, of our plant relatives, our sky relatives, our earth relatives, our ocean relatives. You see, that's the oneness. If one thing happens to one, we will all feel it. And what is happening today with the destruction within this planet is that they're trying to kill off the memory. They're trying to make you forget. And in that depth, within that platform, that's like a perpetrator coming in because you were groomed to forget, and then they snatch you. There should have never, ever been a price on water. They began to prostitute that. There should have never been a bill in the mail for fire, but yet we get those bills. You see the packaging of water. They learned how to prostitute that when there was a time less than 100 years ago when even now parts of the world, but the majority of the world has to pay for clean water. What is that about? And the thing is, once you purify and you break down that water to fit within the system of this human being, what they're doing is they're just chopping up and they're killing the memory and they're killing the life cycles of water. You can't birth any type of life from the water that comes from the sink other than nourishing a plant. You can't do the things you used to do even 100 years ago. Knowing this platform is happening, the knowledge holders, the wisdom keepers, the spiritual leaders, look at us, we're old. We cannot speak enough. We cannot scream loud enough to our future generation for us to say we're sorry if you don't make it, if this planet doesn't make it because of our foolishness. You see, we have to stop fighting amongst one another because we don't need this plentiness, because what we're doing is we're committing a slow suicide. People will cry and carry on and do what they want to do, but that's meaningless. If you don't have the fruits of life within those four elements as rich as what it was meant to be, you see, we have to build a reality as the way our ancestors presented it to be because we have these obligations. I hope this makes sense because what you're about to hear from the remaining of the panel is so crucial. So I want to say, Chi-miigwech, it's an honor. And just remember, when they say that water is life, we are the oneness and we depend on this. Miigwech.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Grandmother Mary Lyons. That was amazing. And I just really want to thank you for reminding us about our memory and that water holds memory. It's just such a profound lesson for all of us, and that we need to not let that memory be taken from us and all of the implications from that. So thank you very much for those incredible words of wisdom. And I would like to now hand the floor over to Kathy. Thank you so much for joining us, Kathy.
Thank you, Osprey. Yagoy Olive, thank you for having me here today. My name, like they said, is Kathy Jetñil-Kijiner, and I'm from the Marshall Islands. So if we're going to talk about, first, I want to thank great-grandmother for those words. They were really beautiful. And for me, when I'm thinking about water and the protection of water, specifically from the lens of the work that I do, I think about the fact that most of my country is ocean. The largest atoll in our country is only 6 square miles, whereas most of our ocean is 750,000 square miles. So we're more ocean than we are land as a country. And so our culture relies heavily on the ocean, on trusting the ocean, on navigating the ocean. We were canoe folks, we were navigators, and we traversed the ocean and understood it as a part of life. And it continues to be a part of our lives, but with the climate crisis, the ocean has now turned into a major source of a threat. As an atoll nation, we're only 2 meters above sea level. And so that rising sea level is threatening us in a way that we've never seen before. The science tells us that, we could be, that the rising sea level could go up 2 meters within 50 to 70 years. The science tells us that it'll come up at least by 0.5 meters. And even by 0.5 meters, most of the islands is underwater. Because of how low lying we are. It's not like the rest of the Pacific, where they have large mountains to move inland to, or large islands to move to. It's an atoll island, which is a type of island that is completely flat and really low to the ocean. And so we're looking at a vulnerability that many nations have yet to see. And so a lot of the work that I do is developing something called our National Adaptation Plan, which doesn't sound all that sexy, but it's actually a way to protect our future. It's what we're calling our survival plan. We have to change the entire landscape of our islands to be able to stay and remain a country in the ocean, and to maintain our territorial boundaries. So this means that, we're looking at large scale adaptation that could look like land elevation, land reclamation, building islands. And when we talk about these kinds of things, we're also talking about changing infrastructure, moving people within the country just so that we can change that landscape, so we can elevate land higher so that we can be protected. This is a huge disruption to our country and our culture, especially given that the Marshall Islands contributes about 0.00007% of the world's global emissions. So what we're looking at is a real climate injustice here and real human rights for our ability to stay a country. And it's also, an impact on our cultural rights too. Our cultural rights are going to be impacted because there's going to be, there's a lot of cultural knowledge tied to our land that's going to be impacted when we change that land. There's land rights, traditional land rights that are a part of our culture. All Marshall Islanders own land. Land is a precious commodity because there's so little of it. And we're going to have to change that just so that we can, and we're going to have to adjust that, all because of the climate crisis. And so these are really existential questions that we're asking ourselves. That's completely unfair. And then if we're going to talk about water, I guess I would say there's some, practical ways in which we've addressed water. Like I said, we're an atoll nation, so we don't have access to water the way some islands do. We don't have rivers. We don't have lakes. What we do have is something called groundwater lens, a freshwater lens, which is basically like a giant contact that sort of exists underneath certain parts of the island. And that contact is usually having fresh water. However, because of the constant overflow of waves coming in from the rising sea level, that's getting salinated and it's getting saltier and we're not able to access clean water anymore because of it. What we're expecting is that there is going to be an increase in impacts on shortages of water and drought conditions. We had an extreme drought just in about, I think it was 2016 or so, when we had to declare a state of emergency for drought. Getting water to the fresh water out to the outer islands was extremely difficult, but also to many of our community members in the urban centers. So, we need in anticipation of this kind of impact of drought conditions, we need cost-effective and practical investment for increased capacity for water harvesting and storage, and also more efficient use of water. So these are questions that we also have to answer within our national adaptation plan. So I think a lot of the work that we're doing and seeing right now is basically incorporating and working with our policy to protect our water and to also protect ourselves as a country. It's working with the different sectors. It's translating this kind of climate science and information into Kayanamayo so that people understand what's coming down the pipeline, that we are going to have to change our entire country. Some of the recommendations we're being given is to move our capital city within, deciding where we'll move our capital city within the next 5 years. These are huge changes that we're making. And again, it's evidence of how serious the climate crisis is, that countries like ours are being forced to take these steps and make these hard decisions. I guess, and I also just want to close with just a Marshallese proverb. It's an old Marshallese proverb that basically means many drops make up an ocean. We believe in collective action. My work believes in intersectional action, that all hands need to be on deck at this point to contribute to the climate crisis, which is why I, as a poet, started moving into the policy space and also into the international advocacy area. But I think that saying many drops make up an ocean is also about collective action globally and how we can connect together as Indigenous people and fighting for Indigenous rights, which I think there's a lot of room for the Pacific to come in on and join that fight and support our Indigenous brothers and sisters across the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathy, for your incredible work and advocacy. And I think a lot of us are just really feeling the grief really of hearing you, as well as the brilliant and courageous effort to make all the changes to an entire country as you were describing. And I just wanted to add, because also Kathy and I and others are very engaged in climate work as well as water work, because it's very hard, as you can hear, to separate the two. And, this is why a lot of us are advocating with governments that there must be funds to support climate mitigation and adaptation, in this case, adaptation for the Marshall Islands. As Kathy said, the minuscule percentage that her country has contributed to the climate crisis in terms of carbon emissions is so tiny, yet they are the ones feeling the impact and having to make these massive changes to their life. And who should pay for that? It should be the wealthy countries who contributed and caused the climate crisis and continue to burn fossil fuels and other activities that make it impossibly difficult for Indigenous people, island nations people, global South folks. And we really need to bring forward this climate justice framework, because this is not right. We can all hear how absolutely wrong this is. And I just send you my deepest love and support for the massive change this means in your life. And it's not right. And in the meantime, we still need to keep mitigating and stopping more harms from happening, while we also really care for communities all over the world who are being harmed. So thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to hand the floor to Alexandra. And again, just reminding people of the interpretation globe so that you can hear her in your preferred language. Alexandra, welcome.
Hola, mi nombre es Alexandra. Gracias por este espacio. Gracias por hacer de este momento y compartir nuestra historia. Formo parte de la Guardia Indígena. Soy presidenta de la Organización de Mujeres y agradezco esas palabras de la abuela, de que nosotros somos las voces de ella ahora, de que nosotros estamos aquí para defender y hacer justicia por el agua, por nuestros territorios, porque sin la memoria de estas abuelas, sin la memoria de nuestros ancestros, nosotros no podemos tener voz y hablar. Es el legado que nos dejaron. Vengo desde Ecuador, desde la Amazonía ecuatoriana, soy nacionalidad Cofán, con mucho orgullo representando y compartir todos los daños que está pasando en nuestra comunidad, en nuestros territorios. Más de 32 concesiones mineras otorgadas por el Estado sin nuestro consentimiento estaban en nuestro río Aguarico, en la fuente de vida de la comunidad Cofán de Sinanguá, en la fuente de vida que es el agua para nosotros sagrada. Nosotros como guardias, como defensores de territorio, como defensores de nuestros derechos, ahora alzamos nuestras voces diciendo que aquí estamos para proteger nuestros ríos, nuestros territorios, y que el mundo y la gente entienda que nosotros estamos luchando por el futuro para nuestros hijos y para los hijos de todo el mundo, que basta de pensar solo en dañar nuestra madre tierra, basta de que solo pensar en los bolsillos. No tengo palabras, más bien tengo mucho dolor de ver que hay mucha gente queriendo destruir nuestra fuente de vida, nuestro río, nuestra agua, nuestro territorio, nuestra casa. Ahora hago el llamado a decir que basta. Empecemos a hacer justicia, empecemos a razonar, a ser conscientes que si nosotros no ponemos un granito de arena, si nosotros no nos levantamos a luchar en contra de estas grandes extractivas mineras, petroleras, madereros que quieren solo exterminar nuestra casa, más bien alcemos nuestras voces y digamos que nosotros vamos a seguir uniéndonos. Escuchaba también el apoyo del gobierno. Nosotros como pueblos indígenas no tenemos el apoyo de los gobiernos, de este gobierno ecuatoriano, no lo tenemos. Hay mucho dinero, creo que por el medio ambiente, pero no llegan a nuestra comunidad, a bases, a nuestros territorios para seguir fortaleciendo y luchando en defensa de nuestra vida del agua. No hay. Nosotros estamos solos prácticamente, pero gracias también a organizaciones, ONGs, que han venido a sentarse, que han venido a cogernos de la mano para seguir en ese proceso de cuidado del medio ambiente, de cuidado de nuestros territorios, del cuidado de nuestros ríos, como Amazon Frontline, Alianza Seibo, TNC, quien han sido las organizaciones que nos están ayudando a fortalecernos, a seguir más vigilante, con más fuerza, para seguir enfrentando esta crisis climática que desde ya estamos sintiendo los pueblos indígenas, estamos sintiendo todo el mundo. Basta ya la tierra está pidiendo a gritos que la respetemos, que Dios nos ha dado esta tierra para que las disfrutemos y las cuidemos, no para que estemos cavando en nuestra propia tumba. Basta de estar solo pensando en extraer minerales como el oro, como la sangre de nuestra Pachamama, que es el petróleo. Basta ya de determinarnos con nuestra agua. Déjenos luchar por estos derechos que tiene la madre tierra. Dice, la naturaleza tiene derechos, sí, pero ¿quién los defiende? Los pueblos indígenas. Los pueblos indígenas estamos para defender esos derechos, con nuestras voces, alzando nuestras voces, diciendo que nuestros territorios, nuestros ríos no están vacíos, nuestros ríos, están con gente Cofán, que está dispuesta a luchar, a dejar un legado a nuestros hijos también, donde se puedan bañar, donde puedan disfrutar, donde puedan correr como nosotros lo hacíamos, como nuestros abuelos, nuestra abuela lo acaba de decir, dejar un legado para nosotros. Ahora, nosotros somos las voces. Como mujeres estamos aquí enfrentando, como mujeres estamos dando esta voz de nuestras abuelas y diciendo que se haga justicia, reafirmando nuestra voz, reafirmando nuestra fuerza, que nosotros estamos aquí en defensa de nuestro territorio, en defensa de nuestra agua, porque si no, ¿quién? Nosotros como mujeres, cofanes, como mujeres indígenas, vamos a seguir en primera línea, si es posible, saliendo a hacer paro, saliendo a exigir que se respeten nuestros derechos, porque hay muchos tratados, muchas COPs que hacen para hablar de nuestros territorios, para hablar de nuestra naturaleza, sin nuestra presencia, sin nuestro consentimiento. Y hay muchos y nunca se ha hecho nada, nunca nadie nos ha garantizado nuestros derechos. Nosotros siempre tenemos que salir a las calles, a morir, a decir que se respeten nuestros derechos. Entonces ahora también reafirmamos que esto va a seguir, que nosotros no vamos a esperar que lleguen a territorio a seguir queriendo exterminar nuestra casa, queriendo acabar con nuestros ríos. Nuestros territorios, nuestros ríos están gravemente amenazados por estas grandes empresas mineras, porque solo piensan en dinero. Nosotros estamos hartos, cansados de hablar y hablar, pero no hay frutos. Entonces nosotros tenemos y estamos preparados para defender nuestra casa, para defender nuestra agua, y ya no esperar que pase hasta el 2050, que se va a acabar el mundo, que no va a haber agua, que no esto. No, nosotros desde ahora vamos a estamos vigilantes de nuestra agua, de nuestra fuente de vida, de nuestros territorios, de nuestro futuro, de nuestros hijos, para que también ellos puedan disfrutar, para que también ellos puedan jugar. Entonces, aquí estamos, abuela, con mucho poder, con mucha fuerza, liderando como mujeres cofanes. También tenemos este proyecto de turismo, que como mujeres cofanes, ¿cómo podemos también tener estrategias para cuidar nuestro territorio? Aquí estamos con el proyecto turístico para decirle a todos que no solo pensemos dañar, que no solo pensemos extraer, sino más bien cuidar, que ahí hay cultura, que ahí hay artesanías, que ahí hay historias, que ahí hay lugares sagrados donde debemos respetar nuestra gente invisible, nuestra gente del agua, como decía la abuela, nuestra memoria, nuestras historias, donde debemos de cuidar y proteger para que el mundo conozca, o para que el mundo llegue y pueda visitar nuestros territorios y pueda sentir esa conexión y pueda entender, o no solo entender, solamente pedimos respeto, que nuestros territorios no están vacíos, no están en venta, no están de oferta para que vengan a dañarlos. Nosotros como mujeres somos agua, somos fuego, y el agua se defiende, y por eso estamos aquí las mujeres pidiendo justicia, y vamos a seguir alzando cada vez más nuestras voces, diciendo que no estamos solas, estamos mucho más uniéndonos, y pedir a todos que hagan conciencia de que no solo los pueblos cofanes, no solo los pueblos indígenas están siendo devastados, o no solo los pueblos indígenas tienen que estar en primera línea, defendiendo nuestros derechos, defendiendo el agua, defendiendo la vida. No solo los pueblos indígenas, esta lucha es de todos. Esa lucha la tienen que venir más aliados para seguir enfrentando el cambio climático y lo necesitamos es ya. No tengo más que decir, solamente hagamos justicia, paremos ya de contaminación, paremos este dolor que causamos a nuestra madre tierra, a nosotros como pueblos indígenas que estamos cansados de estar muriendo en las calles, saliendo a las calles a protestar para que se respete nuestra casa, se respete nuestro hogar. Muchísimas gracias por este espacio.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alexandra, for your very powerful words and all the incredible work that you're doing in your community. And I'm just really honored that you took time to share your message with us today. And the call out, as you said, from your community and Indigenous peoples all over the world who have been really expressing for decades the crisis that is being created by people all over the world who are not listening to the earth, listening to the water, and being connected to the Indigenous voices that have been maintaining healthy relationships with the land. We know that 80% of all the biodiversity left on earth is in the lands and hands of Indigenous peoples because of the respect that we just heard from Alexandra around their relationship with the water and the land. And the fight is so intense. And it's one of the reasons also that in our call to action and other people as well are calling for a rights-based approach to protect the land and the water, because this also includes not only the human right to water, but also protecting Indigenous rights, because we're not respecting, as Alexandra said, their land and their territories. And many Indigenous peoples who are calling to respect free, prior, and informed consent, as an example, when Indigenous peoples say no to bad projects that harm the land and the water. So we know that we need to have a rights-based approach to protect territories and land and respect Indigenous peoples, and also understand their knowledge systems and how that can teach all of us how to live in a good relationship with the earth. And the last thing I'll say, and I just really, want to, acknowledge the incredible effort, as you said, Indigenous peoples are exhausted from this onslaught that is going on in this attack. And, the fact is many people are facing genocide, and it's very real. It is not an exaggeration, and we need to be responsible for that and respond to that call to action and respect Indigenous peoples' rights, territories, and sovereignty. So thank you very much for your presentation. And just so you know, we are putting links in the chat for people to follow up and support these calls to action. Part of this call is to generate real-time support for these urgent matters and to calls to action from our presenters. And with that, I'm really honored to bring Maud Barlow into the conversation. Maud, you have the floor. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Osprey, and thank you for the passionate words that have been said before me. It's very moving and important presentations, and I'm delighted to be here to be part of it. As you know, this is the first conference that the UN has had on water in almost 50 years. And that's pretty outrageous, actually, if you think of it. Since that conference, which took place in 1977, we've learned many things. One, of course, is that we are a planet running out of accessible clean water. Not that the water's gone anywhere, but we have polluted it, over-extracted it, dammed it to death, diverted it from where nature put it to where we want it, that we have transformed the world, the planet in not a good way. And the UN just put out a statement that within probably less than 10 years, we're going to see that demand has outstripped supply by 40%, which is just a shocking statement, a shocking statistic. As well, we know that there is deep inequality in the world, and that manifests itself in access to water and sanitation, with well over 2 billion people not having access to clean water and well over 4 billion not having basic access to sanitation. We certainly learned that when COVID was first announced 3 years ago. We were told, everybody was told, wash your hands with soap and warm water. Well, it turns out that half the population of the world doesn't have a place to do that. So it's, and very much a women's issue. The girls go to fetch the water with their mothers because there's no washroom, there's no safe private place for them to use at school and maybe not at home. So it's really becomes a circular kind of thing. But it's also important, and Osprey, you said at the beginning we wanted to talk about how climate is impacting water. I'd rather kind of turn it around a bit and talk about how our abuse of water is impacting climate, because too often I think we think about climate change caused by greenhouse gas emissions, carbon emissions, impacts everything else. And of course it does. But I think what's less understood is that when we remove either vegetation or water from a local hydrologic cycle, the rain doesn't come back and we create desert in that area. And there is desertification happening in more than 100 countries in the world. It's a very serious reality, is that we're taking the water from where nature put it and we're using it, we're putting it in everything from computer chips and clothes and plastic and food, of course, and then we export it away. So we're taking water from where it is needed by nature. And one of this, so not only is our abuse of water a major cause of the climate crisis, but if we were to really deeply, truly protect and restore watersheds and the wetlands and the soil and the forests that protect that water, this would be one of the major solutions to the climate crisis. And this is, I think, an less understood than it needs to be. So I'm so glad we're thinking what I call thinking blue. Good to think green, but important to think blue at the same time, because I believe you could stop every greenhouse gas emission in the world tomorrow, we'd still have a water crisis. So that knowing that we have these crises, ecological and human, it's no surprise that there's a mighty contest about who should be deciding how this water is used. When we first fought for the human right to water at the United Nations, which we succeeded in getting in July 28th, 2010, there was a huge fight. I mean, people say now, you're kidding. People disagree with the human right to water. You bet. My country, Canada at the time, the United States, Britain, the World Bank, all the big corporations, everybody was against it. All those big, powerful institutions were against it. Now nobody's saying they're against it. It's a done deal, but they interpret it differently. And basically the mighty contest is between those who see water as a commodity to be put on the open market for sale like oil and gas, and those of us who say it's a commons and a human right and must be protected by democratic governance, transparent governance. Otherwise, if the profit motive is deciding who gets water and who has access to that water, the dwindling water of the planet is going to be captured in fewer and fewer corporate hands and investor hands. I mean, we have privatization of water services, although we are reversing that. There's well over 300 municipalities, many of them big ones like Paris and Berlin, that tried privatization and found out it was a mistake and have gone back. We have where they separate water from the land and sell it, put it on the open market. Chile has done that, Australia has done that, Western United States has done that through the water rights law. And now the latest is the financialization of water, where investors can buy up not just water itself, but they buy up future assets. In other words, knowing the crisis is going to get worse and this water is going to be worth more, they just buy up huge amounts of it because they have the money. Maybe you're big ag, maybe you're one of these equity funds, and you buy this up knowing that if you hold on to it for any length of time, it's going to be worth more money. And then of course, bottled water. Our lakes and rivers and oceans are drowning in plastic. And yet again, another new study from the UN tells us that we are going to double the number of plastic bottled water that are produced in the world within 10 years. Outrageous. With all the work that we're doing, how can that have not stopped? Right now, at least a million bottles of plastic water are bought every minute in the world. And of course, we know what the destruction it's doing. So on the positive, we have been fighting back, and we built up a global water justice movement. We did succeed, as I said, in getting the United Nations to recognize the human right to water and the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous Peoples, Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which in my mind go hand in hand. Even the governments that have opposed it at the time have all come on board. Even the United States government has come on board officially. We have reverse privatizations in many ways. We are fighting to take the land and the water back from water grabs. And you heard about some of the fights in the Amazon and other places against the big mining companies. I apologize because I know a whole lot of them are Canadian, and we're trying to do our best back in Canada to stop this practice. But we are creating a movement that I think is very important for us to know about. We created something called Blue Communities, where it started at municipalities, but now it's universities, faith-based groups, and so on, pledged to protect water, and water is a human right, and to deal with the plastics issue by providing clean, safe public water. We have, I think, something like 25 million people now living in official Blue communities. A number of us are starting a project called Blue Schools, where we're going to teach kids right from the very first time that they're sort of able to walk and talk and get to any classroom about the need to learn to be proactive in protecting Mother Earth and water. The United Nations recently recognized the human right to a healthy environment, which most people don't know happened, and it was really a huge breakthrough. We have the wonderful work of the Global Alliance on the Rights of Water, of Nature, and others working on the notion, as Osprey said, that it's not that water serves us. That's the problem. We've seen water as a resource for our pleasure and convenience and profit and growth, and we don't revere it. We don't hear the Indigenous teachings that water is sacred and water is us, and if we hurt water, we hurt ourselves. We need to turn that around, and water has rights in and of itself. A river has a right to flow. Species have a right to exist and thrive, and we need to change our laws in our countries and internationally to reflect that. And I just want to say there, I feel very strongly that we have to have a notion of hope here. I been thinking about it a lot, partly because I have 4 teenage grandkids, and also I work a lot with young people. And I worry that they hear things like there's only 10 years left of a healthy planet. And I think that would be tough to hear if you're 14. And anyway, it's, how do we know that? Like in 10 years, the planet will still be here. Will it be better or worse? I don't know. It depends on what we do now. What I do believe, and I wrote a book called Still Hopeful, Lessons from a Lifetime of Activism. What I do believe with all my heart is that we need to take action. And I borrowed a term from an American spiritual leader, Joan Halifax. She uses the term wise hope. And that notion of wise hope is that you look the issue in the eye. You don't pretend it doesn't exist. Just not all sort of, oh, everything's fine. I don't have to do anything. Somebody else can do it. It's looking it in the eye, saying that you're going to make a commitment to protect all that is good for the planet and the future, knowing you can't control the outcome. And for type A people like me, that's a tough one, but you can't. You have to be attached to what you're doing, but detached from that. And then saying, but I'll put my hand out anyway to mend the part of the world that I can touch and change. And I will have faith that that's happening in many parts of the world. Many millions of people doing things I can't know, restoring rivers, taking back a watershed from a mining company, fighting against the privatization of water, fighting to stop pollution of water. There are wonderful projects happening. And I think, I look at the changes in my lifetime and my mother's lifetime for women, and I know that what could look like it just happened, like the change of weather actually took a lot of work and a lot of time. I do believe that the big task of our time now is a renegotiation, a renewal of our relationship with Mother Earth, and to really understand that we are just a part of it. We're not dominant on top. And if we are going to save the world's water, if we're going to save the world's oceans, we have to place ourselves in a different part of this so-called hierarchy. We are a species like others. But I am filled with hope. I work a lot with young people. I see their commitment, their determination. Together we are doing amazing things in different places in the world, and we have to move forward with that hope. But that hope has to be the wise hope that says, take a deep breath, know that you're in for this. And I say to the younger generations, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to fight some of these fights all over again, because that's just the way it is. But that we would do this together. And my dream is to get people thinking blue as individuals, as groups, as communities, as parts of the country, and internationally. We need to think blue. and we need to honor the waters that gave us life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maud, and thank you for your years and years of advocacy on water issues. We just really respect how much you've been doing this work for a very long time, and the beautiful books that you have put out and all the work that you've done. Thank you so very much. And it's really interesting that some of the forestry work that we do at WeCan, one of the things that the women in the DR Congo always tell us is while they're reforesting very damaged lands, besides all the other things, is the rains are coming back. And so just to your point earlier about that relationship between water and the climate and that relationship. So thank you very much for that. And I now would like to hand over the floor to Aurora and give the floor to you, Aurora. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Osprey. Bonjour, everyone. My name is Aurora County. I come from Bad River, Wisconsin, on South Shore Lake Superior. I come from the Wolf Clan there. I'm here today. I was invited as the vice president of the Anishinaabe Environmental Protection Alliance, a grassroots tribal alliance we formed in the last 10 to 15 years with a lot of the issues that we're coming towards my community personally, communities that we were seeing across the world with our brothers and sisters, Turtle Island, down south. We were just seeing a lot of these things coming up, and we wanted to be prepared. Also knowing that for the last 250 or 300 years, our resources have always been at stake. Our lands have always been at stake. And with what little that we do have left and how we maintain that, what little that we caretake for. I came today not with a set agenda. I had asked Osprey, like, what do I want to touch about? Do I want to share facts, and do I want to share things? And after hearing our grandmother speak, and after hearing Maud, I just wanted to I just been feeling a lot of things this past week, and that connection that they had talked about. Excuse me. I wanted to talk a little bit about when our grandmother Mary had spoke about that sharing of healing, and how we were all brought here, and how every tribe of the world was given things, and I sat here and I thought about that. We were all given a ceremony, song, gifts, pieces of land, life, and a purpose for that. And a lot of us, as you've heard already, are staying true to our lands and our cultures, and really fighting hard to maintain that. And as I am too. I come from the woodlands in Wisconsin, a lot of trees. We also have the biggest freshwater lake in the world, located right next to it, the big Lake Superior, Gitchigumi, we call her. And Mary had said something earlier about when we come from a mother and taking that first breath and what that means. Now, we don't all have to be a mother or to have children, right, to understand that kind of connection, because here's the thing, we are all children. We all came here from the vessel of a woman, from a mother, from that vessel of water. We were all carried in water. And I just wanted to resonate with that. And here's the thing, and there's 100 of you in this room, and I'll share this with you. 2 years ago, I had a full-term pregnancy, and he passed away. He didn't make it through birth, and he never got to take that first breath. And as a healing mother, and trying to find these connections of healing, today is one of the very first times I've came out since then to speak publicly again. And it's profound because this does mean so much to me in my healing. I think about Mother Earth and the healing that she has to do, and that relationship and that connection of trying to bring forth life, trying to maintain it, trying to make sure that your children are healthy, trying as a child to respect your mother and to give that respect for the life and the purpose that you've been given, and trying to navigate so much. We all have a purpose. And feeling that spirit of a mother, the spirit of Mother Earth, and the gifts that she has given to us and what we're returning on that. It's so beautiful to hear so many people, Maud and Alexandra, so many people giving that respect into their communities and giving that respect to the water and just Mother Earth as a whole. It truly is a beautiful thing. And when Grandmother Mary spoke about without the sharing, that I've had to learn in the last 2 years, that to help myself heal, I've had to share in that healing as well. I've had to open up that vulnerability. And that's what we're doing here today. You know, we're sharing in that healing, we're sharing in these atrocities that have happened to our different lands, to our sacredness, to our waters, whether it's an ocean and you're surrounded by island and water is definitely all your life. You are by it, you can hear it at night, you can feel it, you can smell it. To maybe, you know, that creek that runs, or maybe you don't have access to water. I'm here at a conference this week, and it was just a beautiful thing to hear about the Navajo people in the Southwest and their access throughout COVID-19 to sanitation and the water, and just that connection between the access to water and the mental health and the just the emotion and that great connection between those two things of being able to be connected in that type of way. It really just was beautiful, and I wanted to share that with you all. We all came from somewhere in these places. We all came from a mother, we came from the water, we came from a vessel. We came from a land that grew you. Now you can, how you put the claims and how you put the respect to that land, that's up to you. That's up to your purpose, that's up to your role, how you educate that, how you share that, how you share in that healing, how you share in that connection. That really comes down to how you interpret it for yourself as well. Like I said, we were all given a land, we were all, and this has caused wars for centuries. You know, there's wars, people are desecrated, murdered for resources and land, and us as Indigenous people all over the world know that firsthand. But also know, you know, you have this deep connection, whether your family or your people migrated or had to refugee or immigrate, or however you came to be where you're at now, whether you grew, whether it's San Francisco that grew you and you make that connection there, or whether you were grown from a base homeland like Lake Superior, where my people have been for a few thousand years. It's up to you to make that connection there. It's up to you to make that that sharing and that healing in it, because you are feeling the effects. We all are in some way, shape, or form. Just like, you know, my community is small. We're only like, we have 125,000 acres. We have some pristine Cofán sloughs, they're called, that is like a filtration system into Lake Superior. And so definitely impacted, right? And I'm bringing these lots of parallels as a mother, because that's just the space that I'm in today. You know, this, I just want to speak from my heart, and this is where my heart is today. Sharing in that healing, when that happened in my community, it was profound. And I could feel that kind of that transgression of love and understanding, and knowing that my community is strong in many, many ways. And thinking about all the battles that we faced, from being forced into the region where we are now, our migration story into the region we are now, and just the fear that we have, and the unknown. I always think of our ancestors, and I always think of the delegation that went and had to fight for our lands that we're on today. Was that considered a win? What's considered a win? And what in this realm of a world would be considered a win? To me, and I think when Mary shared that, it's being able to have access, one, to the healing, and to the water. That means so many different things for so many different people. And it's hard when we're in what feels like the same situations, even though like every single story or every single thing is different. We all have that collective need for connection and sharing, of healing, of coming together. And I think this in this space is definitely a good place that we can definitely do that and share some of that. I'm so inspired by so many different things. So when it came time to be in Bad River and become a mother, become an activist, become so many different things that I just felt right. You know, we live in a very impoverished community. Last week there, you know, because of the snow, so much snow fell and the roof collapsed in my home. It had an effect on me. It truly did, because you really want to strive, but in the conditions that you're around and you're in are just really compacted, and it really makes an impact on your well-being and your mental health and the struggle that we have. And this is just one silo of a struggle. We're also at home. We're actually.
Excuse me, Megan. It sounds like you are interpreting into the English room.
There was something about closed captioning also interfering. So sorry, Aurora. So
It's
sorry.
okay. Oh shoot, sorry. Just had lost my train of thought there, but I just wanted to note also that we are all children. We're all children of Mother Earth, and as you would respect your own mother, so many folks wonder what they can do, and you know, how can they help? And all the women that are in here today have just done amazing, phenomenal things, and it's really great to be in a space with you all and to share these things. But it's also helping our people find purpose, as I've had to seek and reaffirm that for myself in the last few years, right? Through my own healing journeys. What does that mean? It can mean a variety of things. And find your strengths, find your weaknesses, and just own it, own your strength and own your capacities, and help others do the same for themselves too. We are really lost people in terms of the things that we have lost, but where we're at today and reclaiming our cultures and our lands and our rights, and it's a beautiful, beautiful time, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful for all the work that we've put in. Line 5 runs through our community. It's something that we're battling. Definitely a violation. You know, we've told them no, they are trespassing. We've explicitly told them no, and it just constantly feels like a violation of our rights, of our land. And as a woman who's also a survivor of many types of abuses and atrocities and oppression, it truly feels like an abusive relationship where I've said no, yet you continue to violate. And it's just, that's atrocious. And what do we do to fight back? Or how do you even maintain that and internalize that? Lots of therapy, lots of healing, lots of community. This weekend, I'm going back home to Bad River. We're holding our big drum ceremony there. Something hasn't been in our community for a long, long time, hundreds of years. The fact that it's coming out speaks a lot. The fact that it's coming out now. And when I say now, like in this time, right, we're being violated on such a monetary and land-based level, but yet we have this spiritual beauty that's coming back into our community to help us. Like, those are the kind of dynamics that you really have to like try to focus on. And that goes back to that purpose. Even if you just attend, there's so many things that you could do. Not everyone has that same purpose. Not everyone has that same journey, that same just life. And that's what makes it so beautiful. 8 billion people are on this earth. We are all very, very, very special. We are all very, very intent. And I would just like to close that. Even though my son wasn't given life and he wasn't able to take that first breath, his impact on me, on Bad River, and in our community will be always put forth for the next generations, for always, forever. Those are the kinds of things that we want to put into the world, right? The type of goodness that my son brought in his short span of existence, as I like to call it. A tiny child that has only known water has made that kind of impact for me to fight harder, be stronger, to share in my healing, to share that healing with you all, to share this story with you all, to know that water is life. And I know we say that, you know, my cousin teases me all the time. But when you don't just say it, feel it, be it, live it, truly try to understand what that means for you, for your community, for all of us. And with that, I guess I just want to say, Chimiquech. Thank you so much.
Wow. I'll take a deep breath for a minute. Thank you so much, Aurora, for sharing everything that you did and also being so vulnerable and sharing your personal story with us. I think you might be seeing there's tons of love and hearts coming your way online and from all of us to you. And yeah, much, much love. And I hope that you feel that we're holding you right now and appreciating your words and sending you you know, hugs and love from really all over the world. There's hearts coming in towards you. And thank you for your good words and strength. It takes a lot to be really vulnerable like that and to move all of us. And we send you our love and good wishes. And I also want to share that as Aurora commented, that a big project happening in her territories is Enbridges, that is the name of the company, a Canadian company, is working to bring through a terrible pipeline, Line 5. For those of you who are familiar, this is the same company, Enbridge, that pushed through Line 3 in Minnesota, where there was a huge fight with Indigenous leaders from Tarahauska to Winona Leduc, many fighters. Don Goodwin really fought hard to stop Line 3 from destroying their territories, and the line went through and it's had a lot of frack outs. It's destroying their rice beds, their way of life. And the same company is now trying to put another pipeline in Line 5, this goes to the territories of Aurora. And it would be great if you could put in the chat, Catherine, a link to the Indigenous Women's Treaty Alliance that we are supporting and facilitating, because it's where we're collecting to fight back against Line 5 and to support Aurora and her organization. I think that was already put in the chat, to support Aurora in her role as the Environmental Protection Alliance, Anishinaabe Environmental Protection Alliance, so we can support this work in her territories. Thank you so much again, Aurora. And now we will also move to Vassar Seidel, and I think it'll be really interesting because we've been talking about lots of different kinds of water, including the ocean, but Vassar has incredible knowledge about what's happening in the oceans. And we're really honored to have you with us today, Vassar. You have the floor. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. I just want to take a moment to thank Aurora. Thank you, everyone, all the speakers, all the women who spoke before me. I'm so moved, and really your strength, your courageousness and fearlessness and vulnerability, and the work that you're doing in your communities is inspiring. And I think for all of us can give us strength in this work and in the movement to stop this destruction and extraction of our Mother Earth, because we're not going to solve not only climate, water, biodiversity, acidification, all these crises on this planet, if we don't really address that of how we're treating the planet. So, and this oneness that everyone has spoken on. So today I'm going to focus on a different water system that we haven't talked about today. And I really am so appreciative of all the women talking about their own fights in their communities around extraction and destruction. This area is actually a place where people don't live. So I want to acknowledge that it's definitely a different scenario, but really it is on the same level of extraction and continued destruction of the planet that has created these crises in the first place, really around greed and this disconnect with people and the planet. So I'm Vassar Seidel. I'm going to focus on the deep sea, and this is an area that I've been raising awareness on and campaigning on for the past 4 years. The deep sea is the biggest habitat on the planet. It makes up 90% of the marine environment, and only a very select few have ever been here. So people definitely don't live here, but it's believed to have one of the highest levels of biodiversity on the planet. Alien-like species live here. There's glow-in-the-dark sharks, gelatinous creatures, and deep-dwelling octopuses. Time is also different in the deep sea. Sponges can live for thousands of years, and corals can live for hundreds of years. These ecosystems are so fragile, a footprint could be found long after you and I are gone. The sun also doesn't shine in the deep sea, so creatures here eat the periodic table of elements for dinner, and bioluminescence lights up the dark like stars would in the universe. And here, much of life is too small for the eye to see, but in those very creatures spun the web of life and possibly our very own existence. So we know so little about this ecosystem. Like I said, only a few people have gone down to these depths, and over 99% of the seabed is unexplored. Experts say we actually know more about the moon and Mars than we do about the deep sea. And while it feels far and foreign to you and me, the deep sea supports our ability to live and thrive on this planet. Ocean currents propelled by upwelling from the deep sea create climate that we enjoy and rely on today for survival. The deep sea is also critical in the ocean food web, which is also critical for coastal communities, for food sovereignty, for economies, and for culture. And it provides critical environmental services like long-term carbon sequestration. The deep sea is said to be one of the largest carbon sinks on the planet. And all of this at this moment in time is at risk from a new extractive industry known as deep sea mining. It's the process of extracting mineral deposits, namely rare earth minerals, from the deep sea. This is the area below 200 meters in our international waters. And the deep sea is like clear cutting the ocean. These ancient ecosystems are extremely vulnerable to human disturbance and are slow forming, like I mentioned earlier, with a footprint being there long after we are both gone. And a single polymetallic nodule takes on average 13 million years to form. And for us humans who have a hard time understanding a timescale of millions of years, that's 10 million years older than the last known living megalodon, which is the ancient shark. So these things aren't exactly replaceable, yet mining companies like to refer to them as potatoes on the seafloor, just waiting 13 million years to be plucked up. And in reality, it's actually a very highly invasive and destructive practice to mine them. Also, these nodules are living ecosystems in and of themselves. They're not just dead rocks. They're important for capturing and storing carbon in the seabed, as well as balancing trace metals so the surrounding ecosystem can thrive. So why is this happening right now, especially when we're experiencing so much degradation on the planet? There's an international governing body called the International Seabed Authority, which was created by the UN's Law of the Sea Treaty. This body has jurisdiction in over 50% of the entire Earth's surface. Yes, that's more than all 195 countries combined. Currently, there are negotiations at the ISA, literally as I'm giving this presentation, over the exploitation regulations that will allow deep sea mining to take off on an industrial scale. And because of the obscure loophole in the regulations called a 2-year trigger, industrial deep sea mining could begin as soon as this summer, July 2023. The ISA has already awarded 31 exploration licenses, which, if allowed to begin, would be the largest mining operation in history, an area greater than 2 times the size of France, or if you know Texas a little bit better, 2 times the size of Texas. And that's just the beginning. So the ISA is mandated to both oversee mining practices and protect the deep sea from environmental harm. The Secretary General, as Secretary Generals are supposed to be neutral, Michael Lodge, has said himself, and I quote, "Once you have mining, you have monitoring. Then you can develop standards and you can progressively tighten those standards once you have a feedback loop for monitoring your activity." It is clear the ISA has an inherent conflict of interest as both the profiteer and the steward of the deep sea. Also, by the way, the Law of the Sea states the deep sea is the common heritage of humankind. That means legally it belongs to you and me. So we're stakeholders in this. Shouldn't we have a say in what happens? So this gold rush to the deep sea was actually started by a myth created by the CIA, as it was a cover story for going to the Pacific to recover a sunken Soviet submarine. And fast forward to today, this myth has evolved. Deep sea mining is being rushed under the guise of fueling the green energy revolution. While rare earth minerals are used in technology, including batteries for EVs, electric vehicles, and energy storage, it's an oxymoron to justify deep sea mining as a climate solution when it creates permanent damage to one of the planet's largest carbon sinks and risks exacerbating the climate crisis. Another myth is this false dichotomy that it's either deep sea mining or terrestrial mining practices. It's not an either or. Deep sea mining will be an extension of the strip mining on land and human caused destruction of our planet to out of sight, out of mind industrial mining in the deep sea. But the good news is we don't need deep sea mining. According to WWF's report, The Future is Circular, the demand for critical minerals can be reduced by 58% from now to 2050 with new technology, circular economy models, and recycling. So some of these examples of solutions: CATL has a lithium sulfur battery that has no cobalt, nickel, or manganese. Also recycling. Today, we throw away our technology. We throw away and don't reuse these metals. We don't have a circular economy model. How bad do we need these if we're not even scaling recycling? So it is possible. And there is a company started by JB Straubel called Redwood Materials. Also, hydrogen fuel cells have advanced and are being scaled. There's also other innovations like methods to harvest lithium from the seawater, and companies that are creating batteries that are 2 times more efficient and 2 times lighter than anything on the market, using a waste feedstock to replace metals. So it's absolutely possible. We just have to invest in and scale these solutions. So deep sea mining is simply unnecessary and far too big of a risk. It threatens mass biodiversity loss to communities directly mined and over substantially larger areas, as well as whales and other deep diving species. It jeopardizes vulnerable frontline communities already experiencing the injustices of the climate crisis and fisheries, and it risks exacerbating the climate crisis. Destruction of these deep sea ecosystems means we would also lose the opportunity to discover new species, innovations, and medicines. For example, a crucial part of the COVID-19 test was developed from a microbe found in deep sea hydrothermal vents. So the choice that we have right now is to either double down on the destructive extractive practices that put us in these crises in the first place, or we could choose to innovate, invest in, and scale truly renewable and just solutions. So this is why we're calling for a moratorium on deep sea mining, and we believe it's necessary to assess the ISA's conflict of interest, protect the common heritage of humankind in the deep sea, and ensure the decision-making processes are inclusive, transparent, and account for intergenerational equity. So what you can do is you can tell your representatives now, time is of the essence, you don't want deep sea mining, and call on your country to join the Alliance of Countries for a deep sea mining moratorium. You can also join the movement to defend the deep and learn more at theoxygenproject.com on social media or online for updates on how things are going and how you can join in action. I'll put some links in the chat to both sign the open letter calling for a moratorium, ask companies to call for a moratorium. Some of those companies who have already come out are Google, BMW, Samsung, Volvo, Philips, and more. And also a signed statement for scientists to sign, or you could use it to help send to people and advocate for defending the deep. So thank you so much. I appreciate everyone being here, and happy Water Week.
Thank you so much, Vassar, for that really great presentation, and also for your advocacy for the deep sea. And as you said, a lot of people don't know that this is even going on. So I really appreciate your organization and leadership and public awareness bringing to this really critical matter. I think it just astounds most of us with this mentality that we've been talking about this entire webinar around the extractive industries, and this consciousness about taking every resource to the end of the earth, of extracting any which way we can to create profit over planet, profit over people, profit over communities. And it really has to stop. And it seems just outrageous to the extent that this type of economic growth model that we're in, and the mentality of more and more and more, has brought us to the brink of so many interlocking crises. So just for everyone who is tuning in both online and in the Zoom room, we are posting links. We will also make sure there are links on the live stream so that people can learn more about each of these amazing presenters and the work that they're doing and support them. It would be great if all the presenters could put on their cameras, if you don't mind sharing your video again as we close out. It's been a really important conversation today and a discussion. I know we're out of time, so which is fine. I think the presentations were just so incredible. We needed to hear from all of you in this way. And like I said, people can follow up online with all of you. And just to say, this is we have these sort of water weeks and Earth days, and it's very important that we have these times we highlight these matters, but they're going on all the time. And I would just encourage everyone who is listening, perhaps you're already engaged in an organization, perhaps you're already engaged with protecting something in your community. And if you're not, it's a really good time to roll up your sleeves, because the IPCC report came out this week. We know that the time window to act in all of these areas is very small. And if all of us do everything we can, or to take a phrase, everything everywhere all at once from a recent film that just won the Academy Awards, we need to do everything that we can right now. It's the time to put ourselves all in emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, any way we can. And this is how we're going to generate hope. And that's how we're going to generate the future that we want. We still have a window of time, and we need to do everything we can in that window of time. And these presenters have shared so much important work that they're doing. So wherever you want to plug in, that work is going to need to be done. So we thank you so much. We're going to continue our work advocating in the next few days at the UN Water Conference, and continue on with our work in all the different regions of the world. And again, thank you for the presenters for the extraordinary words that you shared with us and your wisdom, and everyone who joined us and the participants. We thank you for the work that you're doing in your communities. And with that, we're going to sort of close out at this time and wish everyone well. And we will continue on. We will never give up. We're never going to give up fighting for our communities and our beautiful earth. Thank you. Thank you all.